Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to Băhçές. Essentially, I'm Maria. I'm one of the general coordinators of Băhçές. We are a youth-led organization, and we would like to explore the histories of Cyprus, and we're inviting everyone to do it with us. Just so you know a few things about us, we're working on a voluntary basis. So if you like what we do and you want to support us, you're more than welcome to make a donation at historiesofbahces.org. Don't forget to follow us also on social media. And we're also looking to expand the team. So if you want to join us, please get in touch. We welcome all people from all communities on board. Today's webinar will last for approximately 30 minutes. And then we're going to have 30 more minutes for Q&A. So feel free to type down any questions in the Facebook Live event or on Zoom, but we also encourage face-to-face interaction. So our discussant for today is our dear friend from Băhçές, Okcan. So I give the floor over to my dear friend Okcan. There you go.
Maria, thank you very much. So before the presentation, I want to introduce our guest tonight, Sefer Soydar, and prepare the ground for him. So Sefer is originally from the capital city of Turkey, Ankara. He first studied there at Middle Eastern Technical University. Then he moved to Istanbul and he completed his MA at Băhçés University. Right now he continues his studies. And he also works in history projects as a researcher, as a translator. And actually some of these projects are about the history of Cyprus. So we might, in the Q&A section, talk about his ongoing or maybe future planned research on Cyprus as well. Yet tonight, we will be hearing about his work on Waqfs in Cyprus. By Waqfs, I mean, literally speaking, the endowments and donations under Islamic law. In the shape of houses, farms, I don't know, like cash money, any sort of revenue simply. Structurally speaking, these are pious foundations which has critical economic and social roles. And during the Ottoman era, hundreds, if not thousands of Waqfs were established in Cyprus, more or less all over the island. Plus the church property of the Church of Cyprus, these are also gradually integrated into a Waqf framework. For example, bishops, they were also considered as administrators of Waqfs in many cases. So in a way, we can easily say that Waqfs shaped the history of Cyprus for good and beyond any communal and religious limitations or differences. So here tonight, I believe that Sefer's presentation will be very illustrative. Feel free to ask any questions about his research. And I believe that it is based upon a new conceptual and methodological framework that will be very helpful for us to put Waqfs in a more dynamic and historical understanding. So I think it's all from me now. So Sefer, we are listening to you now. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me and your kind introduction. This is for the first time, actually, I'm presenting my research study, of course, except the thesis committee, thesis jury. So I'm a bit excited. Please forgive me about my mistakes. If you're okay, I will present my screen. Here we are. Can you see it now? Okay. Actually, I'm starting with what I will say in this presentation. I will make an introduction about my research, and then I will slightly move on the topics which all Waqfs in the Cyprus integrated, and then I will move on a bit my case studies which I evaluated, I in a more detailed way. Three Waqfs, the Waqf of Selim II, Lala Mustafa Pasha, and Jafar Pasha. And then we can jump on the Q&A session to discuss more detail. Actually, you can say that how you started this topic. What's your main questions? Actually, at the very beginning of this study, I desired to make a study on Grand Vizier's Waqfs, Sadrazam's Waqfs in Ottoman Empire, to see the functions of Waqfs as a political tool of high-ranking bureaucrats and their relation with, again, high-ranking ulema, high-ranking scholars in the Ottoman Empire. And with this way, try to think the government, the state, in an economical way. Which means at the very beginning of this study, I have already taken Waqfs, or as in English translation, which I do not like this term, appeals foundations, as a dynamic economical institutions, which played a crucial role in the redistribution of wealth all over the empire. That is why, as I said, Waqfs, for me, not a static and philanthropic charity organizations, but they are very active, they are very dynamic institutions that have lands, chiefliks, or other real estates on the one hand, and on the other hand, they have really organized both urban and rural structures of the empire. So when I discussing these issues with Anton Sagikyriakou, maybe you know him, he said, why don't you look at the Waqf of Cyprus? Well, when we are discussing the Marash issue, the closed Marash issue in Cyprus. So, and then I decided to look at the what's going on in Cyprus, because, as I say, on the one hand, there's recent studies about the recent happenings in Cyprus about the Waqf issue. And in this way, I can manage my study. Not only I can expand my scope of my study, not only in the Pasha's Waqfs, but also the Waqf of ordinary people. And I will explain what I mean by ordinary. To be able to do so, I have read many of Waqf deeds, Waqf account books, court records, and to make them cross checks, I have looked at the Tahrir of 1572 and the real estate census of Cyprus. And what is important here is I use Geographical Information System as a tool. It is not the aim of this study to produce many maps and produce some aesthetic visuals, but to use them as an analytical tool to understand what's going on with Waqfs in the socio-economic history of Cyprus. I've already mentioned why I chose this topic, but again, I can say that it is the Marash issue that introduced me to this topic. There is really something problematic here in this graphic. It says that Marash belongs to Marash is not belongs to individuals, but all humanity, because it's the property of Waqfs. It is really problematic because if something, we have Waqf endowments and Waqf properties. All of these wealth of Waqfs is belong to this certain Waqf, not all humanity. It is a legal entity, and it has its own ins, çiftliks, and all other kinds of properties. But the schools, madrasas, or something like these things are belongs to humanity. I mean, not hotels, not inns. So it is actually a very political and economical issue to deal with. Of course, as I said, my main aim to promote Waqfs as an institution that has really a critical point in the redistribution of wealth. I have some difficulties. Of course, one of them is about archival research. Here in Turkey, I can find some Waqfs and some not. And I've written a petition to Kıbrıs Vakıf İdaresi, and after maybe 6 or 7 months later, they accepted my petition, and I came to Nicosia. There is no catalog, there is no computer, or there is nothing you can make research. Only you can talk to an official, and he or she decided to give these Waqfs, Waqfs, or all other Waqf records to you. I can take some of them, and I cannot some others, but it is one kind of problem. The other one is about the digitalization. In the Waqfs, we show the Ottoman version of place names. Some of them is coming directly from the Greek version of it. But now we have some places that change after in 20th century. So when I Google some place, it has 3 names or 4 names sometimes, and it is kind of a difficulty that I cannot find sometimes the original coordinates. But when I searching the websites of municipalities or some other sources, I can totally, let's say, not totally, but I can find most of them. So what about the results of all of these research? My main question at the very beginning of these thesis about cash Waqfs. Who were the main actors? There is a really an ongoing debate about cash Waqfs, whether they are making the interests which are strictly forbidden in the Islamic law, or they are making a trade with another people. It is not my business. So because we have money there, we have people there which benefit or use this money. So I ask, who were them? Who were they? And we have 3 actually prototype founder, which you can treat it founder as the capital owner. We have administrator. Again, in the modern term, you can treat the administrator as a, if you think this is as a company, you can say administrator is the CEO of this company. And we have borrower here. Again, when you look at these relations between these 3 prototypes, I introduced a concept, Waqf community, which is actually about a problem in the Cyprus history. We have all national histories, and their claim that if it is written by a Turkish historian, he says that bad Greeks. If it is written in a Greek historian, he's writing bad Turks, etc., etc. But when we look at the daily interactions, the material conditions of the island, it's not something like that. What we are seeing is people coming together, or Waqf institution, cash Waqfs actually, bring people together. I'm not saying here is a very peaceful organization that happens to the island. No, it is the daily material problems bring people together. Someone have debt, which could be taxes, tax debt, or rent debt, and other one has let's say again cash money, and there is some people who manage this money, lending it. In my case, when we look at its spatial distributions in the island, it intensified in Nicosia and certain districts of it, especially the Arap Ahmet Pasha districts, or as you can see in the map. And most of them founded by women in the island. The reason it may be why it's intensified in such a region, I borrowed the concept from Bourdieu, class habitus, both for governors Waqfs and ordinary Waqfs, because when we look at the pattern, people exactly doing the same thing in the same period, in the same place. Most probably they know each other, and this establishing Waqf signifies something. It is something important for them, not in a just religious way, but it is something important in socially. And of course, this has results such as when we look at the administrators, most of them were religious official in these districts, such as they were imams and muezzins of certain mosques, most of them Ayasofya mosques and Ömeriye mosques. And suddenly, when we look at these interactions, we saw these imams as moneylenders, because they have not only just not just have one Waqf administrators, but many of the Waqfs, maybe 20 of them, 50 of them, belongs to same imam as an administrator. For instance, a woman in Cyprus, in Arap Ahmet Pasha district, says that I've endowed my money for the reciting Quran. The Imam of Ayasofya Mosque recite this Quran and give this money as a result of his job. And this money again is and the administrator of my I appointed the same imam as an administrator of my Waqf. So again, at the end of the day, these imam both administrator of many Waqfs, and he gained this philanthropic money again from the same Waqf. And we can say that they established a network, a money lending network. They know each other, they know the market, money market, and they did their job as well. Again, as I said, Waqf community is, what I mean by Waqf community is, it's investigate the relationship between founder, administrator, and person who conducted a relationship with Waqf as a borrower or tenant. In this relation, we have not only Muslims, but also all other communities in the island, which people came together and make a relation, giving a relation. Again, as I said, as a result of daily conditions, material conditions. I couldn't. After that, we have some other Waqfs, mostly funded by the local governors or central grand viziers in Istanbul, which mostly had çiftliks, fields, and real estates, both in urban and rural context in the island. And I asked the role of Waqfs in the organization of space, corresponding and city and countryside relations. And I will take city and countryside not as a divided entity, but there is a something with these each separate identity communicate with each other via these Waqfs. And what I did actually to see the agrarian relations in the countrysides and how these agrarian relations shape the urban landscape of Nicosia. Why I choose Nicosia? Actually, I do not choose Nicosia. Nicosia chose me because mainly all of these Waqfs had something in Nicosia, and then Famagusta. These are the two important cities for Waqfs in that period. To investigate this problem, to see the agrarian, the place of agrarian, the place of Waqfs in the agrarian relations, I produced many maps by using GIS with my data, and as a result of these productions, I again offered the concept Waqf space to analyze the redistribution of wealth, which was conducted by Waqfs from rural settings to cities. In such a settings, Waqf reorganized and shaped urban formations by constructing or reconstructing shops, inns, beds, houses, mosques, schools, waterways, etc. In this way, they defined the urban part of the Waqf space, in which Waqf controls the trade in cities and became a tool for worldly relations of governors and religious personnel. Here, if you look at the spatial distributions of Waqf çiftliks through the island, you saw that it is very in the neighborhood of Nicosia. The main intensification is here. Actually, all of the others, such as olive trees and the center of Waqfs is intensified is here. This is the actually place that I called as Waqf space. Because via this, all of these redistribution of wealth become possible within only this space. Again, there is this narrative in the literature. People established Waqf because for the Cyprus case, because the state desired to Turkify or desired to Islamization of the island. And on the other hand, we have some revisionist historians that claim some pashas, certain pashas, or all of them, try to escape their wealth from the confiscation of state. So they divided some part of their wealth to the Waqf. Actually, I have objection with two of these arguments. Because when we look at these çiftliks and fields, Waqfs says that, such as in the Lala Mustafa Pasha Waqfs or all other one, it says that I bought this çiftlik from Ahmet Ağa, or I bought these çiftliks from Mehmet Ağa. Now, what I mean here is they are not only buying lands or taking lands from Greeks or Armenians or non-Muslim communities in the island. They were voting these. They were taking these lands also from the Muslim community in the island. So they should have another idea in their mind rather than Turkification or Islamization. They try to cover. They try to construct something about their properties. So with this way, by endowing some lands, is my idea. They try to make this redistribution of wealth in a easier way. Or another, when we look at the these revisions understanding, actually, when we look at the division of their wealth in the Waqf, they were mostly giving their money to the religious personnel in the island, not their children or not their relatives. They can choose this way. They can endow their money to his children, but they're endowing their property for the sake of certain the ulema, certain religions or judge of the island. So here to say just they are endowing Waqfs to escape from confiscation is really something easy to claim, really something hiding some other relations in the island. Because when we look at a Kadı Efendi, a judge of the island, it has an intricate relation with Lala Mustafa Pasha. And when we look at the Lala Mustafa Pasha Waqf, Lala Mustafa Pasha divided a huge amount of salary per day for this certain Kadı Efendi, for this judge. So we have a kind of a interesting relation here, which should be actually searched more, not only for Cyprus but for all other parts of the empire. Here for this issue, olive tree is also important agent in Waqf institution. Because if we follow the arguments of Antonis Hacı Kyriakou, he says that olive tree is not something very important for Cypriots as an cash crop, because it remained in the island. It do not attend to the Mediterranean trade like Crete or as in Homs or Homa, which are the neighbors of Cyprus in the east. What I see here, olive tree was really crucial for Waqf institution, because in some cases, Waqfs make their payments not as a money, but sometimes as per olive oil. They paying salaries of teachers by giving them olive oil. We saw that actually most probably it is easy to change for money in that period in the market. Again, what can I say about this issue about the rural-urban relations is about the water problem, actually, which is still very important for the island. Again, we have Ebu Bekir Pasha's Waqf, which conducts a huge project about the waterways in the island, both in rural and urban settling. It is not something philanthropic again, because when we look at the records, the Waqf granted the water using right to certain individuals. So it's gaining the money from this granting issue. But what is again more important about the Waqf community issue, we can see that the same Waqf, Ebu Bekir Pasha, Waqf of Ebu Bekir Pasha, was renting half of the amount of water to Feyzullah Efendi. I don't know who was he, and some other, the half of the other to Nicola. Again, I don't know who is he, but I agree. So if you can give money to this Waqf, you can rent this water. It is not important whether you are Greek, Muslim, or Armenian, or Jew. It is what is important here is if you know the administrator of this Waqf, if you have a network, or if you have enough money to take these properties, you can take. Also, what I can say about this issue, it is there is very important thing about the philanthropy issue. We cannot see any imarethane, soap kitchen for poor, in Cyprus. This is very interesting. I've searched many resources, especially done by Amy Singer, who she is very strict with this imaret issue. And also, she couldn't find any imarethane in Cyprus. And I said that if it is something about the just charity, philanthropy, etc., why any of these Waqf do not construct a soap kitchen for the poor of the island? Again, we can keep this question in mind and think about it for all of these redistribution of wealth issue. And it is when you go to the Nicosia, especially in Surlarici district, you can see this bazaars, this passage in there called as Vakıflar Çarşısı or Vakıflar Pasajı. Still, some of these shops is belonging certain Waqfs, and again, we don't know who is benefiting it, what kind of brand they produced, and it's still a question who is gaining, who is winning in this story. When I first came to Cyprus, I landed in Ercan Airport. It is something really small and an airport. I exit the airport and saw many black Mercedes, which transfer people to the 5-star hotels. And when I came to this Surlarici district, people were really poor. And this time, when I saw these districts in the Surlarici, I saw the real problem of redistribution of wealth in the Cyprus. So for this time, the problem of my thesis remain in my mind became more. I more realized this problem in my mind. It is really different experiments for me, because what I know that from these sources, the Surlarçı district is the most wealthiest region in the island until maybe 20th century. And when I came and looked the picture, there are some migrants here staying, or there is some really poor people who's living in there. Again, you can see this Sarayön Camii, Sarayön Mosque. It is an important asset for the Waqfs. The Imam of this mosque was very important person for Waqfs, because many of the Waqfs administrators belongs to this certain mosque. And again, this was the Medrese of Yeni Cami. It's still using as a school for kids. Can you see? What I found in the case study by looking at 3 important Waqfs, we saw that these Waqfs were not static organizations. Their financial conditions were changed through times. They were giving some money to certain people in one year, but when we look at another year, the number of these personals may be increased or decreased as a result of the economic turbulence in the era. And again, when we look at all of these organizations, we can say that the main beneficiaries of these Waqfs were religious groups, both in the high ranking, such as Sheikhul Islam or Chief of Qadis, or in the very local level, the religious person, the Imam of a mosque. Because I said that it's something political. If you manage to take these religious guys on your side, you can only manage the island. If not, you cannot. When a governor came to the island, he had to establish a good relation with the ulema of the island, which he can collect taxes from these villages or from the urban settlings, because these imams can talk with people, can preach to people, and make a good reputation for this governor. In the central level, when we look at Istanbul, actually the story is similar. If you have a friend like Sheikhul Islam, you can be really powerful in the bureaucracy. You can establish a really powerful network, really a powerful position to make policy if ulema is on your side. So another function is Waqf here. We can extract is it's a communication tool, maybe if you will, a money transfer, wealth transfer tool between governors, between military administrator class of Ottoman Empire and ulema of that period. So, as a conclusion, as I said, I'm taking Waqfs not as a pious foundations, not as a religious organization, philanthropic organizations. Maybe at the end of the day, we have some structures, some some positions that could be called as philanthropic. But when we look at the organization itself, when we look at the structure, it's an economic institution. And at all level, it belongs to a class habitus, both for the governors, both for the administrative class and ordinary people. Oh, okay. What I mean by ordinary people is people who have enough wealth, enough money to make an endowment. Again, we should keep that in mind to see the picture clearly. And I have mentioned about the ulema and governor relations, which conducted by Waqfs. And for further questions, this is really something interesting because these records of Waqfs, while giving something about for historian, but hiding more crucial things such as the organization of production in çiftliks, in Bαhçές, in fields, etc. We don't know the exact situation of peasants, is the exact situation of workers in their. What we know that the chain of rent relation. We have Waqf founder, we have administrator, and we have certain individual people who rented this property as a çiftlik or as a field. To make a further analysis about the situation of peasants, maybe these court records should be taken into account in a serious way, or another sources should be looked at in detail, examined in detail. And last thing, what I say about these digitalization projects, as I said, for me, it is not an aim, not a purpose, but it was a tool. It is a tool to show our data in a clear way, and to represent these visuals as an analytical tools. I can only produce this Waqf space issue, or I can see this structure of Waqfs, redistribution of wealth issues from rural to urban, thanks to these maps that I produced at the very beginning of my research. During this time, I worked at one important project, which is conducted by Antonis Hadzikiriakou, and which I guess this website will be open very soon, which is about the 1833 real estate census of Ottoman Empire in Cyprus. We digitalize the information in this defter. It's about thousands of pages actually, and via this digitalization, you can easily search the name of place or the name of an individual which is recorded in this defter, and you can find where olive trees are growing, or where animals are most intensified in the island. Actually, what is recorded in this defter is digitalized, is transferred to a website in a searchable way as an linked open data. And as I said, I don't know the exact date, but I hope it can be open in very soon. And for such studies to make an social and economic history, it became a very helpful item for researchers. It's end of my presentation now. In Q&A session, maybe we can make more talks in detail.
Sefer, thank you very much. It was very nice to hear about all these, let's say, critical comments, especially on the power relations behind the Waqfs. Because, I mean, as you just mentioned at the very beginning, I see that you came to the history of Cyprus and study of Waqfs due to, in a way, the contemporary developments, especially about Varosha. And it seems that we will be talking about more about Waqfs because just a few days ago, earlier this week, and it's such a coincidence, that Turkish State News Agency has just announced that certain Waqf property in Varosha will be announced for, will be open, for daily public services, as far as I know, and I guess it's also in your thesis. This Bilal Ağa Foundation, founded in 1818, it's like a small praying room or a mosque, I can say. So probably next week during the summer, this issue will be again on the agenda. And I mean, generally, we can say that studies about Waqfs, especially they started after 1990s. And again, it's all part of the land issue in Cyprus negotiations. There are like ongoing cases, of course, in the European Court of Human Rights again. And actually, I like Sefer's comments, especially about the power relations and his introduction of class habitus, like his, in a way, introduction of power relations in a dynamic way. Because the main understanding nowadays in the studies, and especially the way the present Waqf administration is advertising Waqfs and their activities, is quite, how can I say, concealing in this regard. We can see Waqfs being portrayed mainly as centers of humanity. What else, like goodness, kindness, animal rights, and then you have environmentalism, of course. So I think we need more such critical historical studies. But I just wanted to ask you, because in a way, you were saying that Waqfs are first and foremost not like charitable institutions. So did you measure anything, like any distribution of revenues, like what, I mean, how much of them went to religious officials? Because you said that these are the main beneficiaries. And I guess, yeah, they are the guys because they are administrating them. So they are holding the key in a way to the money, to the distribution of wealth. But still, like, do we know how much of this money went to poor, to, you know, the widowed woman, or I don't know, to students? Yeah.
You mean just for Cyprus or for the empire?
I mean, in this case, yeah, just for Cyprus. But if you also have the knowledge, general knowledge, yeah, you are welcome to share. Yeah.
Actually, we don't know as exact numbers, because yet for now we don't know in what percentage Waqfs take the lands of the empire. It is still a question. But if you will, I can say that only a small amount of part of this money belongs to students' children, and we don't know. I cannot coincide with for women, but I can say that a huge amount of maybe 70% of it goes to various religious officials, from imams to muezzins to hafiz reciting Qurans, etc. A little part of it is divided to education, maybe 20%, and 10% of it is divided for the repairing of waterways or these channels, etc., bridges, that kind of it. Again, even this little knowledge tells something about the essence of Waqf.
And yeah, and after all, when you say that some were reserved for education, of course, not everyone's child was going to schools. It's again probably their own child going to the schools. Yeah, so it's also illustrative in this regard. Yeah, and I also like very much to learn that the Waqfs, for example, were buying lands from Muslims, because people tend to see Waqfs within, as you said, Islamization and Turkification of Cyprus. And most of the studies analyzing Waqfs with regard to their role in making Cyprus Turkish fatherland, simply. So it's again very illustrative to learn that Waqfs were actually dynamic institutions buying lands from Muslims as well. But here again, like, probably I'm asking again a very difficult question, but still, do we know like the percentages of the lands that they bought from Christians and Muslims? Like, can we say anything about this? Or if we don't, like, how can we achieve a point in knowing all these information? Is it possible or like impossible?
It is actually possible, but a group of people come together and analyze or transcribe all of these Waqf deeds one by one. And in this way, we can trace this knowledge, because it's very easy in the Waqf deeds. It's written that Waqf says that this Waqf or I bought this çiftlik from this certain individual. If a group of archivists or a group of a historian came together and received these Waqf deeds, it's a very important part. Can read and extract this knowledge. But again, as you said, I really don't know the percentage. But I can only say that when we look at the late 16th century, after the Lala Mustafa Pasha's enters the Ottoman conquering of the island in 1571, now I can say that it is more I traced more Greek people. They bought from many lands from Greek people, but after that years, in the at the beginning of the 17th century, I began to saw many Muslim names, many As or Beys, which sold their land to these certain pashas. Here again, I don't know what kind of trade is that these pashas, or I don't know, we don't know whether these pashas gave money for these çiftliks, or just they came and take these lands from their hand. These sources do not say that. And let's say we accept it's a fair trade. But again, we saw that, especially in certain regions, such as Balikitre village, today it's remained in Kütahya Değirmenlik region, or some part of the region in the South Nicosia, which belongs to the Famagusta. The region belongs to Famagusta. They bought their land from this region, not from the Paphos or not from the Kyrenia. Here again, it's really problematic that I cannot solve. Why sort this region certainly? Why not Deep Karpas? Or why not other regions of the island? I can maybe say that the Larnaca region mostly belongs to European merchants, they have their land there. And in the south part of the or middle south part of the middle of the island, southwest maybe, is belongs to certain monasteries, and that was the region remained for these pashas. Maybe it could be the reason, but I don't have any source to this. Okay. But again, for further studies, we can make some visualization of monastery lands, European merchant lands, and Waqf lands, let's say, and try to analyze their spatial distribution and make some analysis about the economic and social history of island or agrarian relations of the island. I know that Mark Ames is making some studies. That kind of studies came together and talked with each other to solve this problem.
Actually, that was what I had in my mind. I mean, a comprehensive analysis. Probably it needs, especially like the Greek sources, the Greek historians, to come into the picture, and of course, the European merchants, and of course, we need to know more about trade as well. So, do we have any questions from our participants? Maria?
Thank you very much for the presentation, first of all. I will start with an observation. Like Okcan said, it was fascinating to see how you brought in Class Habitus and Bourdieu to discuss the Waqfs. And I think it's a big strength in social sciences to have different disciplines together, because we live in such a complex world that we cannot, we moved beyond taking one framework or one methodology and working with it. I think there is a huge richness in working with different methodologies. So it was very exciting to see you framing the relationships in this way. I have two questions, but I'll make one for now to leave time for other people, and then maybe we can come back to my second question. Okcan mentioned the issue of language. You mentioned that you did archival research and the issues you faced. I think people who don't do history or don't know historians don't realize that big part of their work is being a kind of detective, trying to find where things are and then get permissions and then go back and facing lots of no's. So when I heard you talking about going into archives and trying to get permission, I was thinking that many times one of the issues we face in history is that we have a dominant history, let's say the official history. But then what you described made me think that sometimes we have only that history because of practical difficulties, like access to language or access to archives. Yet I cannot but think that restrictions to archives, in the same way that there are restrictions in language, are about control. Because first of all archives should be open, right? And it should be fairly easy to any researcher to access anything, yet this is not the case. Also, archives at the time we live now should be translated through technology and be again available to all, which is again not the case. So I was wondering if you could say something about this, like access to archive material and languages and control of controlling the narrative. And again, thank you very much for the presentation.
My pleasure to be here. It's a really valid question, actually, because something same is going on in Turkey. It's kind of a, we have some kind of power holders, which are librarians or archive officials, and they are actually have a right whether you can make a research or not. For the Waqf case, it's important because it still have something obligatory for states, both for Greece, Turkey, Cyprus, Albania, all of places that have Waqfs, because the European Right Court has some decisions about the legal entities of Waqfs, of these monasteries or other other institutions which are belongs to Waqfs. And when such courts decided to give property to these certain monasteries or Waqfs, the states should or have to give these lands. So there is again a property relations, or there is something obligatory for states which they do not want to share the archives for with historians or with individual researchers. But as you said, it is very important for all of us to reach these sources, to make research, to gather information and share with each other, to reach useful conclusions, to deconstruct these official knowledge, these official histories, and maybe establish a useful, more concrete basis for all of us. But again, and for my side, maybe I can say it's actually my shame. I don't know Greek, and it is one of the deficiency of my research for such a study. There is some kind of deficiencies, there is some kind of absence, but again, we can only overcome all of these problems while if we shared our informations, if we discuss our researches with each other, not try to hide all of these findings from the people.
Thank you, Maria, for your question. Thank you, Sefer, for your reply. And thanks for me for the presentation as well. Our second question is from Loizos Kapsalis.
Thanks, Maria, and thanks, Sefer. I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about lending and borrowing, how that works, and especially if it's mostly located in towns, or it redistributes money to the countryside, and also to what extent it sustains this system of dependency of the rural population on a very few kind of money lenders. And I'm thinking about this in relation to what we were talking about in our previous webinar, which was sort of at the end of the 19th century, this dependence on, let's say, Greek Cypriot rural population on Greek Cypriot moneylenders. Was this the case always, or was there sort of lending between Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots and so on?
The huge amount of money is lending by European merchants in the island. They really have huge amount of monies, and they make investments to agriculture, especially around 2004 cash crop, actually, to use in Mediterranean trade. Waqf case here is different because when we look at the amounts of money, they were real small. With this money, you cannot maybe buy a house in Nicosia, and maybe you can buy a house in the countryside, but it's ranging around 100 akçes to 1,000 akçes, not much that. But you can cover with this money your debts, your tax debt, your rent debt, etc. This is why it is very important, and it's spread all over the island. I do not mention one or two Waqfs which lending money, maybe 100, 1,000 of Waqfs lending money in the island. And as I saw, their center is Nicosia. It was main center, and we have all other peoples come and go to these places and take money from the administrator of certain Waqfs. Here I saw that the participants, the borrowers, should provide some something that they pay their debt. They prove something. But as I said, since it wasn't huge money, it's easy to prove, easy to take credit from Waqfs. One of the good side of Waqf debt is it is rarely possible to lose your house or you lose your property as a response to your debt. But when we look at the interest rate of cash Waqfs, it's not small. We have interest rate something ranging between 10% to 25%. It's actually a huge amount. But again, we saw that we have some kind of money which is endowed by a certain person, and this money is structuring by a certain, again, administrator, which were mostly imams of Nicosia and Famagusta, etc., imams of that district. And all of the people, we have no exception here, because I saw from the court records, we have Greeks, we have Armenians, we have merchants, let's say Muslim merchants or other merchants, come and take money from cash Waqfs as a debt and return them later.
Thank you for your reply, Sefer. Thank you for the question, Loisos. We have another question by Hassan.
Hi, I hope, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, great presentation. Thank you very much for all the information that you have provided for all of us. Very useful. So, I am a PhD student and I'm basically interested in European merchants trading in the Ottoman Empire. And I have two specific questions on that, but before that, I would like to ask two, again, specific questions more generally. So do you know anything about how long the administrators of the Waqfs rented their properties to the beneficiaries, or let's say the usufruct holders of the Waqf properties? And the second question on this issue is, can you have any evidence suggesting that the beneficiaries, the usufruct holders of this Waqf properties, added any buildings or constructions on the existing ones? And yes, I can ask the next questions later on, if you like.
The first question about the granted properties, it's changing from 3 years to 90 years. A shop belongs to a Waqf, can be rented for 99 years for person. It's really something interesting. But at least they were renting the properties. It could be 1 year, etc. But mostly it's beginning from 3 years, and it's ranging to 99 years. Again, here we have actually something interesting. If you look at the Lala Mustafa Pasha Waqfs, it had a bath in Nicosia, grand bath, Büyük Hamam, still exists. In Vakfiye, he says that some other person couldn't construct any hammam, bath in Nicosia if he couldn't take permission from judge. In a time in the 17th century, somebody come and desired to construct a hammam in Nicosia, and the judge of that time didn't permit to this certain people by saying, if you construct a bath, the revenue of Lala Mustafa Pasha Waqf would be decreased. So you cannot build. Again, when we look at the renter of these Lala Mustafa Pasha Waqfs, it's some kind of a noble person in Cyprus. We can easily see all of these the network relations, power relations in that kind of instances. The other question about construction, it is actually a problem of the law of Waqf, which I don't know exactly very well. I don't have any evidence which they are construct different things on a Waqf land, but we have an argument of Imam Ebu Yusuf, I guess, or Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani, who are the scholars of Islam, the Sunni Islam story. They said that the land and the production on the land, construction on the land is different from each other. The land belongs to a Waqf, okay, but the trees growing in this land is something different. It's not belongs to that Waqf. It should be again endowed by someone. It's treated as Waqf. But as I said, it is not my topic, and I don't know really very well about the Islamic law, this discussion. But if you search the literature, people discuss this issue in a very different way. You can maybe find something more detailed.
Yeah, you're right. I've been reading the book written by Sabrina Joseph on the issue of Waqf properties, and she made an interesting point about, I don't know if you know, the term called kırdar. It's an Ottoman term, Arabic coming from, I think it's from Arabic, the original term coming from Arabic. It's literally can be translated as habitual action. But kırdar is mainly the constructions, either land or trees made in time, and which strengthen the possession rights of beneficiaries on the Waqf lands, on the Waqf property. And then the issue became really complicated about how to remove the beneficiary from the Waqf property, because he already or she already invested in the Waqf property, and the judges or the muftis legitimize this such investments in the registries, and it's become really complicated, this issue. Okay, so the other question, since I am interested in the European merchants, in what sources have you encountered with the lands owned by the European merchants? And again, in what sources did you find evidence about the European merchants investing in agriculture in Cyprus? And in what period, actually? In what period?
The Waqf records do not say anything about the European merchants, but I followed their story from the about 1833 real estate register, and from secondary sources, most probably mostly written by Mark Ames, as I said. They are really investigating to agriculture for their own sake. They give money for the production of the next year. So they force people, peasants, to produce some certain cash crops, mostly cotton, and buy it before the year. So it is all about the Mediterranean trade. But as I said, Waqf records do not say anything about the merchants, but it's a very good source, real estate register. We have about 100 pages of property of European merchants landed in Larnaca. I translated this part for project. So they have the richest guy in the island. They were not Greeks, not Muslims, not monasteries, not Waqfs, but these European merchants are really, really, really rich.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, Hassan. Thank you for your reply, Sefer. We have another question by Maria Georgiou.
Sefer, you mentioned that when you landed in Cyprus, you've noticed the gap in relation to the wealth distribution. We just connected to some degree, as I understand it, to the Waqfs. Yet, on the other hand, we have these European merchants, and I would like to go back to Loizos's question. So, how much of the money stayed in the island, and how much money left the island? And a related question to that is, to what degree the people who had control of the money that stayed here managed to keep it, either in cash or in other form of power or in status? So my question is, the second question is, did everyone who was involved in Waqfs, I mean local people, maintain their status and their privileges? To what degree?
There is a really interesting issue about the Waqf properties from the not Ottoman times, but beginning from the 11th century. All of Waqf properties were part of a corruption issue. Many of them, most of them were corrupted in a way or another. it's really not an issue. We have actually many of poems about this issue. One of them is written in 20th century. It says, if one of the officials of Waqf, if one of the officials of Evkaf goes to heaven, then it's became a celebration for Agop and Karabet, because since in the Muslim beliefs, non-Muslims couldn't go to heaven unless if they were, even if they were really good people, if they were not Muslim, so they cannot enter into heaven. The poem says that when one of the Evkaf of officials of Evkaf Waqfs could enter to heaven, then Agop, Karabet, or other non-Muslims should celebrate this, because they can really easily enter to heaven. So the Waqf issue is something like that. About the money issue, whether if it's leaves the island or stay, I have two Waqfs. One of them belongs to Mahbeyker Sultan, and the other one Çorlulu Ali Pasha. Çorlulu Ali Pasha was a Grand Vizier of an Ottoman Empire, and the other one of the princes of the empire, the mother of a Băhçές. They have properties in Ireland, really huge properties, such as Mahbeyker had a huge amount of mulberry trees, which is essential tree for silk production, but she didn't have any endowment in the island. She had a school in Istanbul and all other endowments in Istanbul, not in Cyprus. We can say that the rent of that places are mostly located in Paphos, leave the island. Or again, for the Çorlulu Ali Pasha case, again, it is the same. He had really huge amount of fields, even çiftliks, maybe 5 or 3 of them, but do not any endowment, any madrasas, something like that. He had a school in Kasımpaşa in Istanbul, a district in Istanbul. But as I said, not any building or endowment in Cyprus. But it is only two. When we look at the other instances, we saw that yes, the huge amount of these wealth stayed in the island. But here we should ask, in what way? In whose hand? Because we have some inspectors coming from Istanbul, and some part of money were given to them for their service, inspection service. And we have Cafer Pasha Waqfs, who gives divides some part of his endowment, his money, which this money produced in Cyprus, this surplus produced in Cyprus, to the Mevlevi Sheikh in Konya. And it's again a different relationship between two of them. But the other, especially ordinary Waqfs, their wealth remain in the island, but if it's a construction, it will burn or crash in a destroy in a strike, etc. If it's money, we can follow a Waqf for 10 years or 20 years at most. Then this money also disappeared. Someone took this money and then didn't pay back. So most probably this money stayed in the island because I said that they were not huge amount, but we don't know what happened, what will happen, all of these wells.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam, for your question. Thank you, Zafer, for your reply. Does anyone else have any other questions? Yes, Liza?
So I guess if we zoom out, is there anything that differentiates Cyprus, perhaps its status as an island, a particular island like this one? So you said that you started off with a more general interest and sort of ended up because of current events to Cyprus, but during this journey, do you see something that distinguishes this case study? Or not just distinguishes, can you sort of say more extract an understanding of the broader issue of Ba'Çés in the empire because of Cyprus?
We have some similarities and differences, especially for the Cyprus case. Its integration to Ottoman Empire is a bit late for the other parts of the empire. So the Waqf institution came to Ireland relatively late. So it's a part of story. For the other part, I've looked some Waqf accounts of different islands, some of them Mediterranean and some of them in the Aegean islands. We saw that the interest of governments, Băhçές, is mostly on Crete, especially Köprülü family. Most of the endowments, most of the Waqfs were in Crete, in such a setting. In my case, Cyprus is something coming from the third or fourth range of these islands. But when we look at the spatial issues, I am for a study, I visualized the Waqf of Köprülü Mehmet Paşa by using Recogito, again one of another browser for these digitalization issues. Its properties belongs from the Balkans, today's Romania, to today's Cisri, which is a village in Syria, and he has many endowments in Anatolia. It is widespread. We don't have such an instances in Cyprus. Waqfs are intensified in an exact region. Maybe it is about the existence of different communities and different landowners in the island, as I said, monasteries, European merchants, Greek individuals, Muslim individuals, etc. But let's say there is really a little amount of Waqfs in Deep Karpaz region, or it is south of the island. We don't have really much of Waqf properties and Waqf finds. Yes, we have, certainly we have, but if we focus on the Nicosia and its neighborhood region, it's intensified in that region. If we zoom out, as you said, and look at the empire, again, actually, we should make more research about the special organizations of Waqfs. As I said, when I looked at the Waqf of Köprülü Mehmet Paşa, which is maybe one of the most wealthiest one, we saw that it had no region. It spread all over the empire. Again, Lala Mustafa Pasha had not only in some structures in Cyprus, but also in Gaziantep or in Erzurum, some part of Anatolia. That's why we should evaluate this institution in a more digitalized way to make a contribution to this file, because we have some books which looked at Waqf institution around 3,000 Waqfs, but we couldn't see anything because you cannot write these things about this. You cannot write something where these properties is intensified, where is decreased, where etc. etc. To see these relations, we should actually bring our data together and analyze it in a more concrete way, actually, to make a good analysis to produce new problems actually about it.
Sefer, thank you very much. So yeah, that's surely the way we should be leading to, as we said. A comprehensive analysis, of the socio-economic life in Cyprus, must be common work and the work of both Greek, Turkish, and all Cypriot historians, because these are all connected. And I'm sure we just mentioned the Arabic sources, like, I mean, I am sure in Gaziantep, for example, there are lots of sources in such languages as well.
Also, we have, I studied the period until the 19th century, beginning of the 19th century. We have English administration after that, and we have some letters, some Waqf accounts, which is written to, sending to both Istanbul and London about the Waqf properties. And then we have some a period which covered the the World War and Second. I don't know what would happen in that period. So it's, of course, as you said, still about the Waqf history of Cyprus is still something should be discovered.
And Hassan asked about, of course, the trade, whether there's any relation between Waqfs and trade centers and Waqf space, for example. Yeah, these are also, of course, very illuminating questions. This shows, of course, then we need to bring in the French sources, for example. So anyway, it was a very lovely talk. It was very nice to have you here, Sefer. Thank you very much again for presentation and for answering our questions here. So I think we are closing our session right now. So see you again, and I'm giving the floor to Maria. Yeah.
Thank you, Okcan. I see that Sen is unmuted. Sen, do we have a final question? Are you?
Yeah, I had a question, but if you are going to finish, it's okay, because I joined late.
That's okay. Go ahead. I think we have a few more minutes. That's
I was
okay.
wondering what I have heard so far, that he was saying that Waqf institution came to Cyprus very late. And I was wondering, is it because Cyprus was on the periphery? It's the only reason, or there are other reasons for that? Can you expand that a little bit if you can?
Okay, and, it's very late in terms of the other part of empire. What I mean here is Ottoman conquered the island in 1571. So only after that, after that period, we saw the Waqfs and their activities in the island. it is not about the being a periphery, or is not about its geographical conditions, but it's about the Ottoman presence, Ottoman introductions to the island. It's something political and not regional.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Sen, for the question. I think we're closing now, guys. Thank you very much to our speaker, Sefer, for the talk. It was lovely to have you over. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for your very interesting questions. So just to be updated on our events, you can follow us on social media. We also have this very cool website that you can check out. I'm posting it here now. It's quite pretty. I didn't make it, but I must say it's pretty. And also, just to remind you that we do work on a voluntary basis. So in our very pretty website, you can also find the donation button. And if you also feel like you want to be part of our team, get in touch either through social media or through our website. And if you have any more questions, you can ask them on our participant feedback form, which I'm posting right now. So please, for those of you who are participating, if you can fill up this form to help us become better, it's essentially just how did you find the website, the webinar, and so on and so forth. What would you like to see? And we're closing. I'm stopping the live stream, but you're free to continue the discussion on Zoom if you want to stay here. Thank you very much, everyone.